part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Before we get to today's episode, I want to take a few moments to tell you about our presenting sponsor, Aligned Health Center. Aligned Health Center is the first chiropractic biophysics clinic in Northern Ohio serving patients in Westlake. The team at Aligned Health Center helps patients with back pain, neck pain, migraines, ADHD, digestive issues, sleep disturbance, whiplash, scoliosis, and much more. The mission at Aligned Health Center is simple: to help people in the Westlake and Beechwood areas achieve the best possible health and overall wellness. They know what it's like to have constant neck and back pain. It's no fun, and they are here to help. And as a special offer for Cavs on the Break listeners, Aligned Health Center is offering a free exam to our incredible fans. That's right, you heard us correctly, a free exam at no cost just for you. Call Aligned Health Center at 440-230-6865 or visit their website at alignedhealthcenters.com to make an appointment and to learn more about how Aligned Health Center can help you. Mention Cavs at checkout to receive the free offer. Again, that's 440-230-6865 or visit alignedhealthcenters.com. Now let's get to the show.
Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. It's over. It's over. Cleveland is a city of champions once again. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.
Hey, what's good? Thanks for stopping by. This is Cavs on the Break, an NBA podcast. This is March 2nd, 2022. John Sabol alongside Sam Amico. Sam, how's it going?
Good. I have a real quick question for you.
Let's go.
Now that you're on television, do you ever get tired of talking all the time?
Do I ever get tired of talking? Not when I'm doing a podcast or talking on the
Okay,
phone
good.
or grabbing beers with you.
I would probably get tired of talking, but I talk now a lot and enjoy it because I spend the rest of my day pretty much writing. So
yeah, writing and talking, two different things. Sometimes it's
Sure
more
are.
fun than the other, right?
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, Sam Amico, you can read his info, your NBA Cavs stuff at hoopswire.com. Follow Sam at Amico Hoops on Twitter. You can follow me at John _ on Twitter. You can also follow us on the pod at Cavs on the Break on Twitter, all right here on the Press Play Podcast Network. Of course, Sam, the Cavs, last time you and I talked, we did the Press Play Podcast live show with Chase Smith, Kenny Rhoda, and Jeremy and Akron at Whitey's in Richfield 2 weeks ago, right before the All-Star break. And we were flying high. We were, eating burgers, drinking beers after, of course, the podcast. And we were on cloud nine talking about the Cavs at the break and, everyone coming to Cleveland. And then everything has kind of fallen off a little bit here in the second half. Not the way the Cavaliers would have liked to probably really start here in the second half. Cavs losing tonight, just wrapping up that game against the Hornets at the Fieldhouse, 119-98. Let's just first talk about what's going on with this team. They're hurt. We get it. They're missing key guys still. Darius Garland returned tonight. Had a season high 33 points. Not enough. Just terrible effort on a lot of points with the Cavs, with the exception of a few players, but not the team basketball we've been used to seeing this club this year.
Well, I think they had three guys scoring in double figures. Usually when they win, they have 5 or 6. They haven't been getting, the offensive production. The big problem clearly is defense right now, probably for about a month. Even leading into the All-Star break, it's been problematic. They keep falling behind by 20 points, it seems like, even in the games they end up winning. And we've heard JB Bickerstaff talk about that, how, we can't keep falling behind like this because you really put yourself in a bad position. And that's a young team for you, a team, I should say, with their young core, their best players are all very young. And as a guy who's now in his 20th year covering the NBA, this is nothing new. This is what happens when you're a young team, and you got to shake yourself out of it. Other teams are taking the Cavaliers more seriously now. They're not being approached as if, rival teams aren't coming in here anymore and thinking that we're the favorite to win because they're the Cavs. Now they're saying we have to play our best basketball against this team to get a victory. And we've seen teams do that ever since the All-Star break. We've seen that. The Timberwolves did it. The Hornets did it. The Wizards did it. The Cavs were lucky to get that. Fortunate, I should say, not lucky. Fortunate to be able to get that win against the Wizards, or this would have been an 0-3 home stretch heading into Philly. So there's just a lot of things that have not been going well for them. And part of it is their fault. They're just not stepping up to the challenge. The challenge has gotten greater because they're being taken very seriously. Teams are getting physical with them. They're packing in the paint, shutting down their big guys. And if you're a veteran team who's experienced this before, no big deal. We'll overcome it. A younger team, that's a different story. JB Bickerstaff said that after the game against the Hornets. This is a patch that is one of our learning processes. This patch here, this rough stretch is all part of the learning process. Now we are learning what it takes to win, basically, when opposing teams take us seriously and realize that we're a good team. And if they don't take us seriously, we're in trouble. So this is all part. He said, basically, the truth is nobody's taken this version of the Cavs seriously before. Now they are. So it's an adjustment. And sometimes young teams struggle to make that adjustment. And that's what we're seeing now.
Well, I thought it was interesting in the pregame shoot around today. Isaac Okoro was quoted in saying, quote, "We were hungrier at the beginning of the season. We were more of the underdogs. We have to take the underdog mentality again right now and keep pushing forward these last 20 games," end quote. And then after this game, JB Bickerstaff, who got tossed, we'll get into all that here in a moment, he basically was asked about that and kind of said the same thing. I was watching the post game, and they keep talking about this junkyard dog mentality. Of course, we have all seen the junkyard dog chain that they debuted Saturday night. And when Isaac Okoro posted the pictures of himself in the locker room with JB giving it to him. And of course, I did a story on that, shameless plug, on Fox 8 a few days ago. But talking about that dog mentality, JB said, what's changed with that defensive mindset and what's changed with the grit. He said they were getting comfortable. This isn't a full quote because I'm paraphrasing. He said that we got comfortable. Everyone was saying good things about us. So the Cavs kept hearing all these good things about him. We've been talking about it. Hey, maybe they're listening to the pod. Who knows, Sam? Maybe they're reading Hoops Wire. Maybe they're watching Fox 8. Who knows?
Dare to dream.
Yes, exactly. They believe in, what they're hearing, and the mentality changes. And then you go from underdog to a group that have finally achieved something. And he's 100% right. I think it's fantastic that Isaac Okoro said that. It may have caused some eyebrows when he said that this morning, but even after a bad loss, you get the head coach that's basically saying the same thing. I think Sam, it's cool to see the coach completely agree with the player, but even better that you have a young player in his second year that calls out his team in the most professional, mature way. And not only that, he says it and he's 100% right. And coach knows that. And the rest of the team knows that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no question. And that's the truth. They have to keep approaching games as if they are underdogs and have that kind of, forgive me for making this phrase a cliche, but kind of that junkyard dog mentality where they're coming after you and they're attacking you, and they've been very laid back instead. Mm-hmm. And that's been an issue. And JB said it, and I would totally agree with him, in that when you're a young team and you taste some success and you become the story of the first half of the season.
Yeah. You
start maybe believing your press clippings, hey, we had 2 all-stars and you get the feeling, and it's human nature to walk out on the floor and say, we're going to win this game. and then not really doing the necessary things to win the game. You know, you still have to approach it as if everybody thinks they're better than you. And, you know, that's a tough thing to institute or convince young players of oftentimes when they've tasted some success, is that, look, you've done nothing in this league right now. You've had a good half of a, 50 game of an 82 game regular season. Now you have to finish those. They're still at this point now. You've got 20 games left, and this next stretch of schedule's tough, and you've got to man up and approach this like, now teams are starting to think they can beat you again, or believe they're, that you are the underdog. So it's a big part of it is the mental approach to it. And when you get this deep in the season, veteran teams such as the Sixers, Heat, Celtics, Bucks, obviously the Brooklyn Nets, when they get healthy, those teams, their approach is, the playoffs have basically already started. We want to get ready for the playoffs. So the Cavs, as a young team, have to grow up real fast emotionally and get to where those teams are, or it's going to be more of the same of what we've seen lately.
Bickerstaff also said, Sam, that the willingness to scrap, to scrap, claw, fight, whatever, that willingness hasn't been there, and it's failing them right now. And he's 100% right. And we can credit that to, I think it's twofold. I think it's one, that these guys did get a little comfortable and they got a little lax. I also think the one thing that can't be understated here is the fact that they're missing guys, and there hasn't been enough consistency with, Rondo and LeVert and Darius Garland being hurt, and, Okoro not being there as well at times. And then, of course, Lauri Markkanen, who's now come back. But you're missing these guys day in and day out with a consistent flow in a rotation, and chemistry is kind of picked up on them a little bit now. And you're seeing it without a Garland on the court, and without Rondo or LeVert, those few games there, man, it was that bad. I really thought 2 games ago, the game where they came back and won against Washington was one of the better games of the year, despite kind of being a bad game performance-wise. But they came back in a game they should have lost, and they won late. A lot of it was because of Okoro's defense, and the Cavs finally. A lot of it also, too, if we're being honest, and no one really talked about it, the Wizards got gassed. They were exhausted and tired Saturday from playing a double overtime game the night before, and I finally caught up with them in the fourth quarter. But I thought that game could have been a turning point for them in terms of, hey, you know what? Now we know what we need to do. We're going to have a wake up call, and, let's just, despite not having our guys, I think we can get something going. And then they fell flat in their face against Minnesota on Monday. They fell behind. They fell behind tonight against Charlotte, and they couldn't come back and close the deal. Whereas earlier in the season, Sam, they were falling behind, down 15, 20 points, and coming back and winning, by 5, 10, 15, 20 points. But you're missing a consistent chemistry and offense. And in these last 2 games you've lost, you've allowed 127 points against the Wolves and 119 points against the Hornets. And then if you even go farther back against the Sixers, Hornets, and Pistons, you're giving up over 100 there too. That wasn't happening earlier in the season.
No, and you're right. It can't be understated that, clearly, first and foremost, they really miss Karis LeVert in the sense that he was a guy that they needed to get acclimated. He was a guy who can help you defensively with his length, but he also helps you defensively because he wears down the opposing team with his offense. He is a guy who can break you down, and they need that. They need somebody, we saw this before with Garland before they got LeVert, was he's out there on an island trying to make everything happen himself because he has to, and if you can get LeVert in there and get him healthy and get him acclimated to playing with Garland, it's a different story a lot of times. Rondo, I know he's been up and down, but guess what? He's a veteran guy who knows how to play at this time of year. And that's a huge thing, especially when you're talking about a guy who has the ball in his hands and controls the offense. He's slipped defensively because of age, but he still knows the tricks of the trade. and that counts for a lot, and they're missing that right now. And so I have said this before, is that we should reserve major concern if they're, until they're playing this way with everybody back, or at least LeVert, to get him in there, get him acclimated. And then you take on your team has a different face to it. And by that, I mean, you have somebody else besides Garland who can just take the ball when necessary, break down defenders, and score a bucket and exasperate the opposing team, so that then when they come back down on offense, they're exasperated, frustrated, and tired out. So yes, they definitely missed those two. Even though they're not all-star players, Rondo and LeVert, they're very valuable players who will be able to help, presumably be able to help at this time of year, just based on experience alone.
Well, and the fact that Darius Garland's still nursing that bone bruise in his back is an issue, because you don't know what you're going to get from him day in and day out, because those bone bruises. Mike Gansey was on Cleveland radio earlier this week on The Fan with my buddy Ken Carmen about how, hey, this is a situation where we don't know how he's going to be. He was pretty transparent about it. The new Cavs GM, Mike Gansey, by the way. But Kobe Altman's still making the moves. Let's just be real. Talking about a bone bruise like that on your back, some days you're going to be 100%, some days you're not. And so they got to be very careful with him. So at some point, they may start resting him a little bit more down the stretch. I think they will, just because you just don't know how he's going to be in terms of playoff time. Here's another thing to keep your eye on, Sam. If you look at the Cavs schedule in the next 5 games, and this is a brutal stretch for them now that they're falling behind. As we sit now, they're 4.5 games back of first, currently in the 5th spot, tied with the Celtics. 3 of their next 5 opponents consist of the Sixers, Raptors, Pacers, Heat, Bulls. 3 of those 5 are ahead of them in the standings. So this can get really ugly really fast if they stumble here. So you say you kind of want to reserve judgment, not worry about until all of them are back. But how can you not worry right now?
Yeah, you'd be a little concerned. The one thing I will say is that, some of these other teams are playing each other. We saw Milwaukee, just played the Heat. They played the Hornets the other night. But I think Boston on Thursday night is in Toronto, maybe. I think they have a tough game. They don't have Jaylen Brown right now. So I mean, these other teams are going to beat each other up too. That's kind of your saving face, is that these teams have to play each other still, as well as more than just the Cavs. But yeah, for the Cavs, you want to stay within a game or so. You don't want to drop down to 7th where you're, in 7th, and then all of a sudden you're 3 games out of 6th with, 14, 15 games to go. So you do have to be concerned in that area. But my point is, let's say they drop to 7th, end up in the play-in tournament. You want your full team healthy. Then that's when you want to, and then if you play a play-in game and get blown out at home, which I don't think will happen, but let's just say you do, or lose at home, that's where really the real concern comes in, because it's like, okay, is this team been put together properly in the sense that it's built to win in the postseason, or was that first half of the season a flash in the pan? Those are the questions that you have to ask. But one thing I wrote in my column tonight after the game on HoopsWire, speaking of shameless plugs, was, I said, look, it's really not about this season. As caught up as we are in it, and as great as it's been, and as fun of a ride as it's been, this really is the Cavs aren't fighting some clock here, like say the Los Angeles Lakers or some of these older teams that are we've got to make it happen right now. The Cavs aren't there. They've just got to ride this team and this success for the next few seasons. Because Darius Garland is probably 4 years away from what most players would consider their prime, 26, 27 years old. So that's why I'm saying it's not a huge concern, because they're going to make the playoffs. Okay, they got 20 games left. if they go 10-10, they're going to be what, 46-26 or something like that. If they, right. So if they win even 8, if they finish 8-12 of these next 10, they're still going to have 44 wins. They're going to be in good spot, so that's why I'm saying you don't need to be overly concerned. This team is going to the playoffs and they're going to get a taste. What you want them to get is more than a play-in game. You want them to get a full series so that they can get, use that for something that will benefit them in next year and the seasons after that.
Yeah, I agree. You need to have a full series, not just the one game to really judge where this team is going to go, but not really necessarily to judge, but to give them that experience. We got a long way to go. What, 19 games, 20 after tonight, or 19 after tonight?
Well, I think there's 20 left because they're 36-26, right?
They are, yes.
So that would make that right. That adds up to 62.
Yeah, 20.
20. And I was promised there'd be no math on this job. Look at that.
Well, Chase and I lied. My bad. All right. Well, I want to talk about a turning point. I thought there was a turning point in that game 2 nights ago, I should say last weekend, when they won against Washington and came back and won 92-86. That was the 26th of February. But, Sam, perhaps there was another turning point of this season happening tonight in the third quarter of the Cavs game. Let's talk about that right after this. Looking for new insights on the Cleveland sports scene with a unique side of Cleveland sports history? Then you found the perfect podcast. I'm John Sabol.
And I'm Scott Sabol, and we're hosts of the Sabol Brothers on the Baseline podcast, a podcast about Cleveland sports, but not your typical podcast about the land's sports teams. Join us as we embark on a journey of sharing a unique and historical side of Cleveland sports history with the help of some former Cleveland sports stars and other historical figures.
All right here on the Sabol Brothers on the Baseline podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey everyone, I'm Holly Wetzel.
And I'm Jeremy Powell.
And we are your hosts of The Orange is Oranger, a Cleveland Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network. We give you all the Dog Pound coverage that you'll need each week to get you ready for kickoff and beyond.
Don't miss our breakdowns of each week's matchups, game recaps, and any and all news out of Berea to feed your Browns appetite. As we all know, Holly, dogs got to eat.
That's right, Jeremy. Hit that subscribe button and never miss an episode of the Orange is Oranger Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey everyone, this is Mike Voorhees.
And I'm Brian Shaw. No, not the pitcher. We're the Guardians of the Land MLB podcast, formerly a Swing and a Tribe.
Don't have time to watch 162 games of baseball? We do. We have you covered with recaps of the games, stats, and analysis throughout the MLB season.
Subscribe now to Guardians of the Land and Press Play Pods for all your Cleveland sports analysis.
Welcome back to Cavs on the Break, an NBA podcast right here on the Press Play Podcast Network. John Sabol from Fox 8 News and also co-host of Sabol Brothers on the Baseline podcast here on the network, joining you with the great Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. Find all your Cavs and NBA stories, rumors, draft talk. I can't believe we're going to be thinking about draft, even though the Cavs aren't really going to be a big draft per se team come spring, but they're already coming out with mocks in the NBA, even though we haven't had NFL draft yet. I just can't believe I saw some of that on Twitter today. But anyways, all your NBA and all your Cavs stuff, hit up Sam over at hoopswire.com. Wealth of knowledge right there. Again, thank you for joining us again here in the second half of this podcast. Sam, I'm kind of teased there before going to the commercial break about why I think I was actually wrong about a turning point 2 nights ago in that loss against or the win against the Wizards. Hopefully I'm right about this one. There could be a turning point in this season from what happened in the third quarter of tonight's game in the loss to Charlotte. And that was JB Bickerstaff getting tossed in the third quarter, getting ejected, arguing a call. Chetty Osman got called for a foul. He didn't like it. Probably said some magic words to one of the officials, and he got tossed. He was professional in his post game, apologizing to his teammates, to his family. I don't know if he apologized to the official though, but we'll see.
Definitely apologize to the team.
To the team. Yeah, of course, to the team and everything. And just basically said emotions got to the best of him. Heck, emotions get the best of us all the time. And if you're a coach, I don't want to say it's acceptable, but it's kind of more acceptable than maybe, us in the regular workplace. At any rate, Sam, do you think this issue with what the Cavs are dealing with, lack of defense, lack of ball movement, lack of an attitude, that gritty attitude, and, Bickerstaff just boiling over, really I don't think it was necessarily the bad call or the no call or the call, but was an accurate call. I think it was more just his frustration over the last few weeks boiling over in that moment. Do you think his young team got the message? And do you think that's going to light a fire under them here as they go into this tough stretch?
I would think that without doubt, you're correct in the sense that he's frustrated watching because he knows that these guys, he's talked about it all year. This is a team that wins, not because we got small stars, but not because we have super duper stars, but because we have a lot of fight in us. And that fight has waned a little bit. Now, some of it's been the injuries. Some of it's been, things out of their control. But some of it has been, it's just not there. And, Isaac Okoro said that. Sometimes it's just not there. It's not been there consistently enough when you talk about the raw determination. And I think that that's worn on him a little bit. I think that I'm not saying anything riveting here. I think that JB would probably admit that yeah, it's getting frustrating, and I want to see the same fight we had early in the year. I want to see us be able to sustain that. So yeah, that could be something that the players are like, hey, the coach is frustrated and he's fed up, and I'm sure they're going to hear it in the film room, so whatever you got to do to get that back as a coach, you're going to try to get that back. Now, I think that he legitimately was upset about what he viewed as a one-sided officiating throughout most of the night. That happened right after Chetty Osman was called for a block when clearly JB thought it should have been an offensive foul as opposed to a block. So I just think, yeah, there's something to that. We've seen that coaches do that all the time, where they just they're frustrated, they're done, and they're gonna, take it out on the first person that they come across. It's just like me when I'm driving sometimes. Somebody will be going slow, and I'm not really mad at that driver. I'm mad at like the other 7 that cut me off before that driver, but that driver's going to get the horn. So I just think it's human nature when you're frustrated like that. You just let it all out, and JB addressed it. He said he apologized to the team, and he needs to be there on the sideline with the team, and he can't get thrown out because the team needs him. So again, it's just a part of the season. It's a stretch that has been disappointing, and again, part of it is the injuries. But I will say this about the Cavs earlier this year, even when Ricky Rubio was down and Garland was out, and Okoro was out, most of the time, the guys who were on the floor kept things competitive just with sheer effort. And they've got to get that back because injuries are going to happen. They will, and bumps in the road will happen. And when they do, what made the Cavs so impressive was they weren't going to let that stop them. And now it seems like they're kind of allowing those things to slow them down. Maybe not stop them, but slow them down enough to where it's impacting what really has been a fantastic season.
It's funny. We were so high. Everyone was so high. Cavs took the entire league by storm and surprised everybody. You heard and saw the buzz. I know you talked with some people at All-Star break. I talked to some people at All-Star break, and they all were convinced. No one was saying, oh, they're going to come back to earth. They all knew or have all agreed that this team was legit down the stretch. And they still are, despite the struggles recently here. What I find interesting, Sam, to your point before we went to break, and what you wrote in your on your website, HoopsWire, today, is that this team is as great as it is this year. It is so built for the future, and we can't get caught up in the crap that's happened now. We just can't. And so we can talk panic, we can talk about everything, but it's just the nature of the beast. We want to see them succeed. Everyone, this fan base in the city is so hungry for a winner, especially since the Browns wet the bed in the fall. And baseball is in another lockout. Or not another lockout, in the lockout that has continued. So the Cavs are really the city's only hope. It's like that Star Wars quote when Princess Leia says R2-D2 to Obi-Wan, "Help us, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're our only hope." That's the Cavs.
Right. And we're Princess Leia.
Yeah.
Well, and I think you're right in that, kind of, and it's hard to do as a fan. It's hard to have perspective. Look, I've never, with the Cavs, obviously being in the media, my job, my career calls for me to be a little bit impartial and not get too wrapped up in the wins and losses, which I don't. I obviously, being a Northeast Ohio guy from Akron, I grew up rooting for this team. I want to see them do well.
Right. Me too.
But the difference with the Cleveland Browns, I can tell you, I've never covered the Cleveland Browns, so I can just be a fan. And I lose all perspective when it comes to the Browns as being a fan. I get really mad at the losses or the bad plays. I get mad at the quarterback. I tweet stuff out about Baker Mayfield, and the fans were like, "Hey, why are you being so mean to Baker?" Like I'm a media guy covering the Browns. I'm not. I'm just a fan talking about it.
Sure.
My point being that it's easy to lose perspective, easy to lose sight of the big picture as a fan. I know, right, because I'm one. And in reality, what we've got to keep in mind, even though we're so wrapped up in all the fun that the Cavs have given us this year, and I always say the next best thing to winning a championship isn't finishing second. It's a regular season, a season full of fun. Yeah. And right now, that's what the Cavs have given us.
They've given us fun.
I understand the fans. Yeah. And I understand the fans, getting wrapped up in all these little losses, or, I have a friend who sits on the edge of his seat for Cavs games. He's obviously not in the media. He's just a fan. And when they lose, man, he takes it so hard. Sam, I'm like, dude, there are 82 of these things.
We all have a friend in a group chat, or a friend that you talk to that's always doom and gloom about everything. Yes. And some of my friends listen to this podcast, and I'm not going to rat them out right now, but they know who they are, because my friend is exactly like your friend. They're not the same person.
Right.
They live and die by every single game, just like they do with the Browns. And one bad thing, if the world's coming to an end, like, oh my, it's just guys, put it in perspective.
We do have one friend who is that way. One That's common true. Friend.
We do.
His name's Chase Smith.
Yes, that is Chase. Hey, before we wrap this up, two other things I want to talk about. One is, what's up with Evan Mobley, man? He was a non-factor tonight in this game, and he's still probably the rookie of the year candidate right now. But he's struggling a little bit. I don't know what it is. I mean, he scored 9 points and 4 from the 9 from the field tonight, but you got to see him. You got to see more productivity out of him. I don't know what his deal. I don't know what it is. He's shooting 48% in the last month, down from his great month of January. I don't know, what is it? Is it that has he hit I don't want to say a ceiling, but has he hit a wall, or is it the matchups are better against him? What do you think it is?
Like I said, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I can say without a shadow of a doubt, he's hit a rookie wall. And that's not uncommon. You see this all the time. It happened with, Kobe Bryant. It happens with great players. And that's what, by all indication. Now, listen, he's still going to have his efficient and effective and impactful moments. But by and large, this is usually how it goes. It's, wow, we just played 52 games. We still got, at the All-Star break or whenever, we've played usually about 50 games. That's when rookies will start to say, we got 30 more of these, not out loud, but in their body, in their mind. It's like, I got to do this 30 more times. And I still got, Karl Anthony Towns to face, Joel Embiid. In the NBA, everybody was a college star for the most part. So I've got to face all these guys 30 more times before we wrap this up. And now in the Cavs case, then I'm going to have a playoff series. So it's a difficult thing for a 19, 20-year-old kid who's played a year of college basketball under most circumstances. A lot of times back before when they were letting high school players enter the NBA, you're talking about a kid who generally had played 25, 30 games in a season if he went to one of those really big high schools. If not, then it was probably 20, 21 games in a season. Now the college teams are playing, low 30s in the season. That's not even half of an NBA year, right? So Mobley's hit a wall. He's he's talented enough that he can break through it. He can push his way through it. But that's just where he is right now. And I mean, look, he had a really nice game the other night. That's not what I'm saying. It's probably going to be more sporadic now for him, those great games. But the thing that we have to focus on with Evan Mobley is I still think that kid can be Kevin Garnett, Tim Duncan type of make that kind of impact. Chris Bosh, be an all-star for years to come. He's got all the tools. He forces nothing. I love that about him. He's not, granted, maybe we see 4 of 9. He didn't really make an impact, but he forces nothing. He's not going to make a ton of mistakes. He's not going to hurt you. There are just games where he might not help you much. And that's all part of becoming a pro and playing this long season. And in your first year, I think that great things. And I've said this before. He is kind of like the Cavs' Nick Chubb. He is just a guy who's going to go out there, do his job, not a bunch of histrionics and he's not an emotional guy at all. Just goes out there and does his job. He's very effective. And regardless of what happens the rest of this year, the future is so bright for the Cavaliers because they have him on the team. But right now, yes, he has hit what I see happen to rookies all the time in the last 20 years of doing this all over the league. They slow down toward the end of the year because it just takes a toll on them.
Well, and you also can credit that to them just not physically and mentally being prepared because they're rookies. Their bodies aren't built the same.
And other teams are being more physical with them for sure.
Sure. And he will be the first one to tell you that he needs to get better and bigger and stronger. It's funny. I was, listening to, I was in on one of the Zoom shoot around calls the other night and he just looked tired. And this was not at 8 a.m. This is at like 11:15 in the morning, more so than he has been in the past. So I don't know if that's just catching up with him or maybe he had a bad night's sleep. I don't know. It's funny. Everyone that you talk to that's in the league or a former coach, former player, they all rave about Evan Mobley. They still do. And you're right. He's going to be, like a Chris Bosh, Kevin Garnett type player with his size. And if he just works on his body and works on his perimeter shooting, the guy's going to be an absolute stud, perennial all-star. I mentioned to you before, mentioned to our audience here, when I had Mike Fratello on my podcast with my brother, he raved about Evan Mobley. And this even recently, I talked with Craig Elo on my recent pod, shameless plug there. He got to cover Mobley at USC because Craig Elo now is the radio play-by-play analyst for the Washington State Cougars men's basketball team out in Pac-12. And he's got to see Evan Mobley when, he played there last year at USC and he watched a lot of his tape and his game prep. And of course, being out there on the West Coast, he got to watch a lot of their games and he was beyond excited when the Cavs drafted him because he knew what this kid's going to be and grow into. And he absolutely loved what he did this year. Happy that he was an all-star or was going to be in the skills or the Rising Stars competition. and was happy that he got that recognition. But he also said like there's going to be some growing pains along the way. And I mean, Craig Elo nailed that. Now I got to say, not to throw this NBA Hall of Famer under the bus, but I asked Rick Barry, who coached him in the Rising Stars.
Oh boy.
I asked Rick Barry the night before. No, it was the morning before him coaching the Rising Stars. When I covered him over in Streetsboro, he was playing pickleball, and he was over there with some like Cleveland Pickleball League, and I was covering the story for Fox 8, and I was talking to him, and I was like asking, "Hey, what do you think about the Rising Stars?" And I think I told you this when I talked to you on the phone a few days last week, and Rick Barry didn't know anything about those guys. I mean, he just hasn't been studying the NBA. He didn't know about Isaac Okoro or Evan Mobley, and it's not that he was asked to coach this team, but just because he doesn't watch a lot of the East Coast teams. And so, but he said he had been told all about Okoro and Mobley. But he was also told all about, mostly Mobley and his game. And he was just eager to watch him because he had never watched him before. And I would have loved to have talked to him after the Rising Stars to get his input just about how he played in his game and everything. But, I was expecting him to rave about him, and he was brutally honest, saying, "Hey, I've never seen the guy before."
Yeah,
and
most of those legends are like us in the sense that they'll watch whatever team is in their home market, and that's about it. I remember when Larry Bird, Boston Celtics legend, when he first retired, he told me that he moved down to Florida, and the only games he got were the Miami Heat. And this is back, shortly after the Heat's expansion years, and they weren't very good. And he said that was all he did was watch Miami Heat games. Larry Bird became a huge Miami Heat fan for a while because those were the games in his market. And he probably couldn't have told you anything. And that's the way most of those former NBA players are. They just settled in as a fan and will watch whatever teams in their market. And beyond that, they don't watch any more than we would.
Yeah, you're right. And that's something against Rick Barry. It's just kind of funny, like, oh, you're gonna be coaching him, but you don't know anything about him. But he's anybody who knows Rick Barry, he is blunt, brutally honest. And I respect that a lot about the guy. And but I would love to know what he thinks about Mobley now, especially after that game and just in general about all those guys. And it's funny because Rick Barry's team ended up winning that. The Rising Stars team Barry ended up winning that little tournament over All-Star weekend.
Give Rick a call. I'm sure he'd be happy to talk to you about it because he's always so friendly.
Come on now, Sam. He's a teddy bear. No, he couldn't have been nicer with his time with me. And a hell of a pickleball player, by the way. That guy is a hell of a pickleball player. And I covered his son, not Rick, not John, his other son, Canyon, down in Florida one year. He was a graduate assistant, a graduate.
And he shot his free throws underhanded.
He did, just like his dad. And he was really accurate too. And his son, Canyon, is playing in Iowa in the G League, which I think that's the Timberwolves affiliate there.
Yeah.
So hopefully we get to see him up in the association at some point down the road. But we'll see. So Sam, we got 20 games left. Do you care to want to give a little prediction of where you think this ends here, or do we want to save that for another podcast? Because we got a long way to go. But even with this big bump in the road that we're dealing with right now, obviously they're a playoff team, but I don't want to give you a final record, but do you think they slip into the play-in game, or do you think they stay and hold true between that 4 and 5 seed?
I hope they don't. I hope they don't slip in. I could see them slip into 6th. I could see them slipping to 7th. I hope they don't. I hope they avoid 7, just because they've had such a nice run that 7 would be. It wouldn't be a disappointment. The whole year just getting into a play-in game and being the highest seed in the play-in tournament would be way more than anybody thought they were going to accomplish. But with the way the season's gone, you don't want to see them fall back into that. I think that they would, I put in the column tonight, let's say they win 9 games out of 20. So they finish 9-11, which would, I think they'll do better than that, but let's just say they do that. They go 9-11. That still gives them 45 and 37, depending on what these other teams in the Eastern Conference do. you would think that would give you no less than the 6 seed. It could mean 7, but you'd think it'd give you no less than 6. And if you can do that, hey, look, you're guaranteed first round series without having to play in the play-in tournament. You're playing probably, the Milwaukee Bucks or somebody. I think one of the Cavs' greatest hopes, John, really is that the Nets kind of, they've been struggling. Obviously, they haven't had Durant. They haven't had Kyrie full time. We don't know when they're going to get Ben Simmons. So they've been kind of very up and down. They suffered a lot of blowouts. It's been a struggle in Brooklyn, as great as they can become, that, if the Cavs can go 45-37 or 46-36, 47-35, they should be able to hold off the Nets, and the Nets will end up playing. As crazy as it sounds, they'll end up playing in playing tournament. Because, again, let's not forget that once the Cavs get through this stretch, their schedule the rest of the way is the easiest in the Eastern Conference. When you're looking at teams that are 500 or better, you throw in home court advantage. March is a huge month for the Cavs. They have 16 games in the month of March, if I remember correctly. So by the end of March, we should know, even though there's a few weeks there in April that you still got to, take care of business, we should know by the end of March where they if they're going to be a real playoff team or if they're headed to the play-in tournament. But I think that they'll go 500, no worse than 500 the rest of the way. And if you do that, let's say they do go 10-10, 46-36, that's a heck of a year. That's at least 15 games better, 15 more wins than most people predicted. So I still think they've hit a rough patch. It's probably going to stay rough for about another 5, 6, 7 days. And then I think that they'll start to come back around thanks to the benefit of guys healing as well as a lighter load toward the end of the year.
Hey, and let's not forget.
So I know I sound like Chase, but I'm staying optimistic.
Yeah, the optimistic Chase is rubbed off on you. That's for sure. The eternal optimist. Hey, let's not forget, guys. The Cavs won 22 games last year. 22 games last season. 22. And they're at 36 right now. So let's put everything in perspective a little bit. Basically is what you're saying. So
yeah, like I said to do, it's hard to do as a fan. They're going to double their win total last year almost by accident, because I'm sure they're going to, I shouldn't say I'm sure, but I'm pretty confident that they'll win 8 of the next 20 games. And that would double their win total of last season. And that's, nobody expected any of this. And this is not a LeBron James led team where if you don't make it to the finals, it's a huge disappointment. This is a team that still has years, presumably years, if everybody stays here, which I think they will do, because it's such a great culture and a great environment, and they're growing in it, that this is a team that you look and say, 3 or 4 years from now, or even 2 or 3, if you're really impatient, 2, this team could be really, become the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah.
And that's a team that nobody saw winning the championship last year. This team has that type of potential, especially when you factor in, you've already got an all-star, 22 years old, and Darius Garland. You have an all-star, Jared Allen, 24 years old, and you also have Evan Mobley. Right there is your big 3, and none of them are older than 24 years old. So this is just the start. This year is just the start.
Well, you mentioned the Milwaukee Bucks. They beat the Bulls tonight by 1 point. So
Heat.
The Heat. You're right. The Heat.
Yeah.
The Heat. I saw the red logo on the scoreboard here, and I don't know why I went.
They're all the same, red and black.
Yeah, red and black. Yeah, except the Heat had, I guess, yellow too in there. But anyways, they beat the Heat 121-19. And if the playoffs were to start today on March 2nd, the Cavs would be the 5th seed, the Bucks would be the 4th. So they would play Milwaukee.
That's what you want in the first round, the defending champs.
Yeah. Well, I call me crazy, but a healthy Cavs team, I think, matches up pretty decent with them.
Well, they really took it to the Bucks full roster. in Cleveland the last time they played them. So,
Yeah,
if the Cavs are playing their best and are playing with that hunger and that drive and that determination, sure, crazier things have happened and they could do something. But they've got to get that back, and they've got to get all their bodies back.
we shall see what they do here. The Cavaliers, again, falling tonight against the Charlotte Hornets in the 119-98. Cavs now 36-26 on the season. Long way to go. 20 games left. They play again Friday, March 4th against the Sixers in Philly. And that'll be the first time we'll get to see Joel Embiid and James Harden playing together against the Wine and Gold. That should be interesting. All right, Sam, let's wrap this thing up here. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. If you haven't already, smash that subscribe button. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, and wherever you find your podcasts. Also, big thanks to our new sponsor, Aligned Health Center. We're excited to be partnering up with them, and we're excited that they're on board with us here on Cavs on the Break and NBA podcast. If you have any neck or back pain, please reach out to them at AlignedHealthCenters.com. And if you use the code CAVS at checkout, you'll receive a free offer. So we're excited to be partnering up with them, a local Cleveland business in the Westlake and Beechwood area as well. Remember, you can follow Sam at Amico Hoops on Twitter, read his stuff, anything Cavs, anything NBA, all NBA at hoopswire.com. Follow me at John_Sabol. Follow the pod at Cavs on the Break. And hey, be sure to tune into Fox 8 News here in Cleveland. You'll see yours truly on there as well. Thanks so much, everyone, for listening. We'll be back next week. Sam, it's been real, buddy.
All right, man. Look forward to talking to you. And the next time we talk, hopefully we'll be talking about all the great things the Cavaliers have done over the previous week or so.
We can only hope to get out of this little funk. That's for sure. All right, man. We'll talk soon. Thanks for listening, everyone. Hope you guys have a great night wherever you are.
Congratulations, Cleveland. Your decades-long wait is finally over. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.